Okay, so this is the fourth in our four-part series on Chesed Kehilchasa, and our topic is Tzedakah priorities. And what I want to do here is look at 5 practical questions that I've been asked, but as always, Psak rests with the Rav. The first question is it better to give one large gift to one recipient of tzedakah, or is it better to give many small gifts to many recipients? Second, is it best to give directly to needy people, or to go through an umbrella fund, like the Rabbi's Benevolent Fund or something like that? The third, how do we prioritize aid to Israel versus local needs? Fourth, the fear of enabling somebody to not pursue work by giving them tzedakah. And then finally, does donor recognition undermine the mitzvah of tzedakah? So those are the 5 issues that I'd like to address. The first 2, the issue of giving one large gift versus many small gifts, as well as the issue of giving directly or to an umbrella fund, can really be addressed under one heading, which is, what are the goals of the tzedakah that we provide? What are we trying to accomplish when we give tzedakah? Sounds like an easy question, right? That's like a trick. What are you trying to get me to say, Rabbi? What are we trying to accomplish when we give tzedakah?
Either be outcome-based, where you're improving the condition of the recipient, or character development, where you're improving the condition of the giver. So both.
Those are 2 possibilities. One other.
Societal development.
So the first one, certainly the most straightforward one, is to help the needy person. Right? That's like the pasuk says in source Aleph, we're not going to get rid of, we're not going to eliminate all forms of poverty. Nonetheless, therefore I tell you, therefore you have to open up your hand to your brother, to the indigent among you. That's the obligation, is help the needy people. Simple, straightforward. Second is to honor the mitzvah of Meiser Ani. That's the one that I did not hear. The mitzvah of Meiser Ani is that 2 years out of every 6, you give a 10th of your income to the needy. Aser to aser, eight kal tuaz zarecha, as I brought you in, source base. So based on that, there is a practice of giving tzedakah not only from one's produce, and not only 2 years out of every 6, but to give every year, and to give from all of one's income. There's a lot of debate as to where exactly this practice of giving 10% comes from. Not Meiser Ani. Meiser Ani is obviously a deoraisa, but the practice of giving 10% from our income in general. Some argue that it's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Even though you don't have a pasuk for it, it is something that Jews have always done, going back to Sinai, and this may be seen in Source Gimel. The Bartenura comments on the first Mishnah in Peah. The classic first Mishnah in Peah, Elu Dvarim She'en Shir. The following things have no minimum or maximum threshold, depending on the item you're talking about. Peah, there's no minimum amount that you give. Bikurim, Ra'ayon, appearing in the Beis Hamikdash, Gemilus Chasadim. So if you take a look at the Bartenura's comment on Gemilus Chasadim, in Gimel he says, Gemilus Chasadim Dibba Mamono. There are 2 different types of chesed. There's Gemilus Chasadim Shabaguf, helping others physically, you hold the door for somebody, and then there's Gemilus Chasadim of money, Kigon, Pidyon, Shavuyim, ransoming captives, Lahal Basharumin, getting clothing for those who need it, Lahachilas Harevim, feeding people who are hungry, Kerosiblan, Yesh Lahen Shiur. Those things have a shiur. Sheyitim B'chol Pam Shetavo Mitzvah Kazuli Yado, Chamishis Min HaRevach Shebenachasav, giving a 5th of your income, up to a 5th of your income every time. There is a max shiur, there's a cap on what your obligation is, and that's 20%. My point is not to discuss 20%. My point is not to discuss whether shiur is a minimum or a maximum. My point rather is to show you that in this list of what are generally considered deoraisas, he includes Gemilos Chasadim, the practice of giving up to 20% of your income. That suggests it is in fact a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. However, others say it's a derabanan linked to aser to aser, and that's what I brought you from the Aruch HaShulchan in source Daled. Be'emes shiurim elu the meiser v'chomesh enon min haTorah. He says the whole threshold of giving a tenth or giving up to 20%, that's not biblical. Midirabananu, it's rabbinic. Da'as mechua akra dev'chol asher titeli aser asren ulach. He links it to Yaakov saying, I'm not sure why it's funny because I took that and linked it aser to aser in my notes. But I am rereading now, and that's a mistake, right? Because he doesn't say aser to aser. He says it's about Yaakov's pasuk. Aser to aser. That's very interesting. I must admit, I pulled that line out of a previous shir, and now I'm wondering whether that was correct. I made reference on my sheet to this Aruch HaShulchan as well as to a Maharil. It could be I should have quoted you the Maharil, but the Aruch HaShulchan is wrong. Sorry, this is simply not correct. It's not about aser to aser. It's rather linked to Yaakov. Either way, it's all derabanan. That's not under debate, but it's not about aser to aser. It's rather about Yaakov. Again, Maharil Nundalid would be worth seeing. There's the view of the Pischei Tshuva. The Pischei Tshuva in source Hey, who says it is not D'Oraisa and it's not D'Rabbanan either. He says in source Hey, the end of the source, Ve'eno ela minhaga be'alma. It's a minhag. That's what it is. The fact that we do 10% is a minhag. That doesn't make it non-binding. Newsflash. It may make it more binding. Not less so. But the idea of giving this percentage may be linked to Meiser Ani, honoring the mitzvah of Meiser Ani, extending it to all income. And then finally, as Chaim said, there's an element of character development as we develop our rachamim. We are supposed to become merciful people. We imitate Hashem. Hashem is merciful. We should be merciful as well. The Sefer HaChinuch says this beautifully in source Vav. He's talking about the mitzvah of Peah. The mitzvah of Peah requires that when I am harvesting my field, I leave over a corner at the end for the needy. I can't collect everything. So look what the Sefer HaChinuch says is a benefit of this practice. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ratza lios amo asher bachar me'utarim b'chol midah tova v'yikara. Hashem wanted the nation He chose to be decorated with every fine trait. V'shiyelem nefesh bracha v'ruach nediva. They should have a generous giving spirit. Ukvar kasavti ki mitoch ha'pu'ulos tisparal hanefesh. He says, I've already written, and by the time you get to mitzvah 216, he's written it quite a few times, that our souls are affected by our deeds. V'tia tova v'tachol berchas Hashem ba. And that's the way we will become good, and we will earn Hashem's bracha. Ve'ein safek, he says, there's no doubt. Ki behosir ha'adam chilek echad miperosav b'sadeyu v'yafkirim sheyenu bo atzrichim. That when a person leaves a portion of his produce in the field and says, anybody who needs it can come take it, Tira benafsho sova ratzon v'ruach nachon u'mevorach. He will find a satisfaction of spirit and a proper spirit in himself. He will feel that Hashem has given him of His bounty. He will rest easy. And what he's really saying here is more than just when you are generous, you'll feel good. But he's saying when you don't go after every last thing, learning to leave money on the table is actually a good trait. If a person cultivates within himself a sense of desperation, a sense of I need to get every last dime, that breeds within them a sense of hunger and a sense of greed is an ugly word. But a sense of ravenousness, like I have to take. When you teach yourself not to take everything, right? Like somebody who's training themselves when it comes to eating, right? A person says, like the Rambam's advice about eating, that you don't eat down to the last bit. That can actually be a big help. And so he continues to say, somebody who gathers everything into the house. He says the person who doesn't leave anything in the field. The pauper saw the stuff growing in the field. and they're hungry, and they're looking and waiting, and he says, no, I'm taking it all for myself. Yora benafsho belisa fake roa lev v'nefesh ra. He demonstrates a bad attribute, effectively a mean personality. So we are meant to develop our mercy. That shows up in a few different ways in the Gemara. Take a look, please, at Tzor Zayin, talking about a separate mitzvah, the mitzvah of Prika Uti'ina. The rule is that if I see my friend's animal is staggering under a burden, I'm supposed to help him unload the animal. That's Prika, that's unloading. On the other end, if he's having trouble loading it, then I'm supposed to help him load it. That's Ti'ina. So the Gemara asks, the Torah presents these mitzvahs. In one case it talks about it with an enemy's animal. In another case it talks about it with a friend's animal. So, Ohev lifrok v'sonei liton. If you have a choice, your friend has an animal, and the animal is struggling under a burden. He needs your help unloading the animal. On the other end, your enemy is struggling to load the animal. Which one do you help first? From a pure Tsar Bali Chayim perspective, if my focus is on the animals, which one should come first? Unloading, right? Unloading. That's what should be first, because that's the animal that needs your help. However, he says, no, mitzvah b'sonei. First you help your enemy to load. Why? K'dei lachofes yitzro. In order to work on yourself. That's the idea. Similarly, the Rambam talks about in Mitzvah Ches, the mitzvah of supporting and helping non-Jews in various ways, and he notes a couple of reasons for it, but one of the reasons he mentions is V'racham avakol ma'asav. If you emulate God, and God's mercy is on everybody, you should develop mercy for everybody. So, what emerges from this is that I have certain priorities. A priority is to assist people with mercy. In other words, to help people out. To improve my midah of mercy. To do it with precision, like Meiser. Right? There are certain lessons that are learned from here. So to come back now to our two initial questions. First of all, is it better for me to give many small gifts? Or is it better for me to give somebody a big gift that's really going to help him out? That's the question. So the Gemara in Eruvin Samach Gimel tells us, source test, if you give all your truma to one kohen, maybe ra'av la'olam, you bring famine to the world. There's a Tosfos in Ksubos, another one in Kiddushin, that also explains how the Tanan distributed their tithes to more than one party in order to make sure that they would help multiple people. And in fact, this is brought in the Shulchan Aruch. It's in Yeridei Rishon and Zayin. I didn't bring it on the sheet, but this is Paskin Lahalacha, that you're not supposed to give all your truma to one kohen. Anybody a kohen here? Do we have any kohen here? No, so we're all givers. So don't distribute your truma to just one kohen. Make sure you give it to more than one kohen. Yeah.
Does it make a difference if one like say somebody comes to the shul and they have a wedding to do in Israel, so you give them something and you don't get a tax receipt, and then give it to a soup kitchen in Jerusalem.
So that's another question. That's another fascinating question.
Well, you give it to everybody.
Right. Well, the question you're asking is, what if I have a choice between two gifts, one of which is going to come back to help me and one of which will not? Right? That's really the fundamental question. So I would look at that and say, if one gift is going to come back to help me, let's pretend that we can actually figure out the numbers. So I know that if I give this person $18, I know that actually I'm really only giving them $11. That $7 out of this is going to benefit me as I'm presenting ludicrous numbers. That's not the point. The $7 coming back to me. So now to look at it as, well, I'm only giving $11. That's the way I should look at it. I shouldn't say, well, I could give 18 here, or I can give 18 here, and they're all the same. They're not all the same. I would think you have to take that into consideration. So just increase your gift to the other fellow. Maybe you should get a degree in accounting, and that way you'll be able to do this on the spot. But the Rambam takes this and emphasizes it on a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, "Hakol lafi rov hamaaseh." Everything is based on how much you do. So the Rambam takes that in a way that you would not necessarily have I would not necessarily have expected. Look at what he writes in Yud. Hama'alos. levels, lo yusagu, are not achieved lefi shir godel hamasa, based on the magnitude of one's actions, el lefi rov mispar hamasa, but rather based on the quantity of actions. How many actions did you perform? Mashal zeh, sha'adam em yitain lemisha ra'oi elev dinar. He says, look, let's say you gave somebody who deserved it 1,000 dinar. It's not a dishonest person, it's a person who's a worthy recipient. The palachas, li'ishachad, one guy, one time. Lo tusaglo malas hanedivus bezeh ma'isa echad agadol. That's not going to make you generous. Kemosha tusag lemishiz nadev elaf pa'amim belev dinar, compared to somebody who is going to give 1,000 dinarim in a course of 1,000 gifts. V'yitin kol dinar mehem al tzad hanedivus, giving each one generously. I forget who I heard this from, but somebody who once commented that what people need is they need exercise. They need to exercise the muscle involved in writing a check. So if you have to write checks 1,000 times, that'll make you a better check writer. That's the idea. Yes, Chaim.
We also take the point from Michsav Meliyahu that you have the whole idea of Nekudat HaBechira, whereas if you give a massive gift that exceeds and that really pushes you beyond your limit that you're used to, in a way that really grows you to the next level, where if you're used to giving small gifts, that's not really difficult or hard, or training anything or exercising anything.
Right. Or you can look at it the other way, which is if you have somebody for whom generosity is not at all a factor, then by doing it 1,000 times, he moves it solidly into the area that becomes part of his habits. You can look at it both ways. Chaim's point is that Rav Dessler makes the point regarding free will, that much of a person's activity is not really governed by free will at all. There are certain activities that we are born into doing, and there are certain activities that we're born into not doing. Most people who are raised in healthy homes are not thieves, and never dawns on them when they walk into a store to shoplift. They never dawns on them. They walk past a house and the front door is open, or they walk past a car and they can see the window is down. It doesn't dawn on them to reach into the car and take something. That's not a decision of free will. That's not who I am. It's not even a decision. It's not even a question. On the other hand, there are bad things that people do that also are not even about their free will. There are people who, I don't want to invent an avera now and get people thinking they should do this. But there are people who, let's say, grow up in homes that are quasi shomer Shabbos. They're basically familiar with the concept of Shabbos. They're not going to drive. They're not going to whatever. But flipping on lights never occurs to them as a violation of Shabbos. It doesn't even dawn on them that it should be so. It's not a free will statement of, I am now violating Shabbos. They don't think twice. Yeah, they may have heard some time from somebody, but it doesn't register for them. So Chaim's point is that you could have somebody who regularly gives small amounts. But it's not even a free will battle. It's just automatic. He reaches into his pocket, he takes out the Zichron Binyamin dollar, and he moves on. You have him do $1,000 gift.
A guy that has a lot of money, he's forced to give money. Everybody's hounding you on that.
Right. So maybe he needs something. Right. So Chaim is saying that there could be an issue of exercising magnitude as well. But I don't think that's the exclusion of the Rambam's point. I think you need to exercise in both directions, right? When you go to the gym, so you have to lift some heavy weights, but you also have to do a lot of repetitions. Both of these are necessary. Yes.
So, like a practical example.
Like I know. Yeah.
So, let's pretend that a Shabbos meal costs $10, right?
Yeah.
52 weeks, and I have for the year to give $520. So if I give him like $10 every week or $520 at the beginning of the year, is there a real difference in according to the Rambam?
Well, he'd be a lot happier because he knows he has his money right off the bat. But the Rambam, I think, would be happier if you actually did it each week. And again, going back to Chaim's point, once something is no longer a challenge, this is already incorporated into you, then maybe you need to look for other challenges. I think that may be so. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky in his Emes LeYaakov on this, where it shows up in Shulchan Aruch, this is also in Yerodei Rishon and Zion. So he notes an additional reason to give to many people is to avoid charges of favoritism. You don't want people to think, he gives to that Kohen, he likes that guy, or he gives to this particular needy person. So that's a separate point. But we're going to answer now our first question, which is, it's often better to give many small gifts than to give one large gift. Second application the umbrella fund versus giving to the needy directly, if I'm supposed to be working on my mercy, so ostensibly direct contact would be better. Right? If I can just write a check to the rabbi's benevolent fund, and then the rabbi is the one who deals with the people who don't have money for rent, or who don't have money for food, or can't pay their kids' tuition, or whatever it is, then I never encounter need. I'm not working on my mercy. Right? The mashulach who comes to your door, or the person collecting for himself, who comes to your door, wants to tell you his story. He doesn't want you to just look at his card and write him a check, because he knows if he can tell you the story, your heartstrings will be pulled, and then you're going to give him a more significant donation. So the direct contact with the needy would be better. However, there's a problem. Right? The problem is that we are not necessarily good at evaluating what the need actually is. And it's very important when you disperse tzedakah funds that you give it to those who actually need it, because otherwise you're cheating the people who are needy. So because of that, we sort of play a balancing game. If you take a look at the Shulchan Aruch in Source Yid Aleph, and you're there, Reish Nun Vav, he says, Kol ir sheyesh ba Yisrael, every city with a Jewish community, chayavim lahamid mehem gaboy tzedakah anoshim yeduim v'ne'emanim. They have to appoint known, credited people who everybody trusts. And he continues, the Machaber says, Ve'ein mechashvin b'tzedakah im gaboy tzedakah. You don't sit down and do an accounting with them. We don't say to the gabbai, you have to present to the community a record of what you gave and how you gave it. However, the Rama writes, Umikol makom, however, Kedei sheyiyu nikiyim me'Hashem u'Yisrael tov lahem litein cheshbon. In order to be innocent in the eyes of God and Israel, it would be good for them to present an accounting. And this is all, the whole trustworthiness is only if you have good gaboim. Misha eino kosher, but if he's not someone who's kosher, or he took the position by force, then we do in fact force him to make an accounting. The same thing is true for anyone who's appointed over the community. We're going to insist that you account for the funds that you are spending. That's what I used to do when I ran a benevolent fund. Every year, Shabbos Parsha Shkalim, I published a report from the benevolent fund. I didn't say who had received, but I said, what percentage was given locally, what percentage was given to people for mailings or whatever it was, what percentage was used for certain kinds of needs, because I felt like people would want to know that their funds are being used in a way that is accounted for. And I did see, for sure, an uptick in people giving to the benevolent fund, because they understood that it wasn't the rabbi's slush fund. This was actually, something that was used for needs within the community. I think it's a worthwhile way to do things. Rav Moshe Feinstein talks about the importance of having these umbrella funds in Source Yud Beis. He says, Nira lefioni yizdaiti pashut, sha'makor l'chiyuv zeh, hu mehad isvanya bava basra, davches, shloshim yom l'tamchui, gimel chadashim l'kupa. He says, of course there's a need for communal funds. The Gemara in Bava Basra talks about how long you have to live in a city before being obligated to give to the different kinds of funds that they had. The Tamchui, the Kupa, which some distributed daily needs, some distributed weekly needs. If there were no obligation for the community to create such funds, how could you say to people who move in, you have to now start donating also? Obviously, there really is a duty to create such funds, and therefore communities classically had such funds. Famous line in the Rambam. Me'olam lo ra'inu v'lo shamanu v'kal mi'Yisrael she'ein lahen kupa shel tzedakah. He says there's never been any such thing, a Jewish community without tzedakah collection. That's absolutely nonsense. The Aruch HaShulchan has a whole discussion about this, doing this as a progressive tax in which people give according to their means and so forth. The upshot is, then, that in terms of developing your mercy, it's better for you to give directly. However, communities are supposed to have the umbrella funds in order to make sure that you have responsible people who know what they're doing. It's all well and good to work on your mercy, but you have to make sure the aniyim are being covered. That's another one of our needs. The Igros Moshe also has a line, which is very interesting in the light of the way tzedakah collection is done in our shuls, or tzedakah distribution, I should say, is done in our shuls. He says that you're not allowed to create a fund at the expense of the needy. saying that since you're getting from the fund, you're not allowed to collect from individuals. That's exactly what goes on in the shuls. Is that if you're collecting from the Gaba, you're not allowed to circulate in the minyan. But Rabbi Moshe Feinstein disagreed with that. Okay?
What reason? Why did you say that?
Because the whole point is to help the Aniyim, not to harm them.
It's double dipping, right? You recognize
Yeah.
double dipping?
He recognized that it's double dipping. In other words, that the people who attend the meeting are the ones who are funding the overall fund. I mean, whether he'd want them collecting in the minyan versus door to door versus standing at the entrance of the shul is another story, right? The practice of collecting during davening is a time honored practice. That goes back to the Gemara. The Gemara talks about Purim having Matanos Levionim during Megillah reading, and that Dafka they moved Megillah reading to not be on Shabbos because that's when the Aniyim would go collect. So this is a very, very old practice. Okay. Does that not answer your question? I was attempting to not answer your question. Sorry.
How can you hear every word of the Megillah if you're giving out money?
I guess we have to multitask. Multitasking. The third question was the needs of Israelis versus local needs. So the Gemara Bava Metzia talks about prioritizing your tzedakah. Take a look at Source Ayin Aleph. Rabbi Yosef says, referring to a pasuk in Parashas Mishpatim, Im kesef talveas amiyes he'ani imach, the pasuk says, when, it's not if, when you lend money to my nation, to the pauper among you. So, Ami v'nochri, if it's a Jew versus somebody who's not family, Ami kodem, so the Jew has priority. Ani v'ashir, wealthy person versus needy person. You have a wealthy person who maybe needs it for an investment, or has some temporary need. Ani kodem, so the pauper comes first. Aniyecha v'aniyircha, your needy people, meaning your own family, versus aniyircha, people who reside locally. Aniyecha kodem, so your own family comes first. Aniyircha v'aniyiracheres, your city versus other cities. Aniyircha kodem, your city comes first. The closer they are to you, the more of a priority they are. Ani imach, the pauper who is with you. That's the obligation, according to Rabbi Yosef. He mentions nothing about Aniyei Eretz Yisrael. Right? Israelis are not mentioned here. Presumably, if you live in Israel, then they can be Aniyei Yercha. If you don't live in Israel, then they're not Aniyei Yercha. However, the Sifri does. The Sifri builds on source Tezvav, the pasuk in Parshas Re'eh. Ki yehyev v'cha evya, when there is a pauper among you, me'achad achecha, from one of your brethren, be'achad sharecha, in one of your gates, be'artzecha, in your land, which Hashem gives you. So the Sifri says, read it in order. Achad achecha, your brother comes first. Achad sharecha, your local needy people at your gates. In your land, that's Israel. So the Sifri says in source Tezayin, Ba'achad she'arecha, in one of your gates, Yoshvei Yircha kodmin liYoshvei Yiracheres, the people who live in your city, those have priority over those who live in another city. Ba'artzecha, in your land, Yoshvei Haaretz kodmin liYoshvei chutz la'aretz. Israelis come before those who live outside of Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, they appear in the Shulchan Aruch as a priority in source Yudzayin, V'yoshvei Eretz Yisrael kodmin liYoshvei chutz la'aretz. Those who live in Israel precede those who live outside of Israel, and the Chasam Sofer adds, Yerushalayim precedes other places in Israel. In source Yirches, he says, V'hinchanu gamkein she'yeshivas Yerushalayim chashiva me'yeshivas shari mekomos be'eretz Yisrael. He says living in Yerushalayim is more important than living in other points in Eretz Yisrael. Imkein mamela yesh liyoshvei Yerushalayim kadima. So therefore, those who dwell there have priority before people live in the other cities of Eretz Yisrael. And he says v'chol ze baru pashut l'chor. He says that's obvious, right? One of the bases for saying that living in Yerushalayim has priority is the Gemara at the end of Ksubos, where they say that a spouse can force the other one to move to Yerushalayim. That shows that there's priority to living there. However, he goes on to say Ela b'mashakasav shepashud be'enai sheshivas Yerushalayim yesh b'mitzvah yosim yeshivas sha'ari ari Eretz Yisrael there it is. Reisi b'shitas b'masnisin shulay ksuvos shekomal Yerushalayim v'zafilu b'zman hazeh l'chol haposkim and so on. All right, fine. I'm not sure why I brought that, except to show the ksuvos source. But you see then that there's a priority for Israel and there's a priority for Yerushalayim within Israel. So much so that the Chidah has a very interesting story. Somebody complains about, you've definitely heard this song before, that shlichim are coming from Eretz Yisrael and they are collecting, and the result is that people who need to benefit locally are not benefiting. The local tzedakah efforts are suffering because people are sending their money to Eretz Yisrael. Does that sound at all familiar? So look at what the Chidah says. He says, first of all, this never happened. That's first of all. V'ulam shmana. He said, listen up. Now you have to keep in mind, the Chidah traveled around on behalf of the communities in Eretz Yisrael. That was part of what he did. So he says, V'ata shmana, v'ata dalocha. You gotta know. Da'amru b'sifri, shkula yeshiva Eretz Yisrael, k'lametz Hashem b'torah b'chorbana, v'ayach yeshivta, etc. He says, first of all, you have to know that the living in Israel is parallel to all the other mitzvahs in the Torah. So first of all, it never happened. But if it did happen, he says, living in Eretz Israel is really important. Odas Ramban, he bechlal ramach mitzvah sasei de'araisa. The Ramban thinks it's a mitzvah. Vein poteroso. V'imel sodo tidrosh kach l'cha b'samim rosh. And he says, if you want to talk about the secret behind this, he says, he's very poetic. He's always poetic. So he's borrowing psukim and just weaving them together. The kach l'cha b'samim rosh from Parshas Kisisa. Ki be'eretz Yisrael kol tefila kol tchina hechelu olan al hashamayim me'al v'asa es olaso. He says, every tefillah in Eretz Yisrael rises up to Shamayim. Lochen be'eretz ha'amim, not tefillah, not davening that happens outside of Israel. Masach mavdil. You have a curtain dividing between those who live outside of Israel and Hashem. Ubalulim yalu me'eretz lo metuhara. He says tefillah only gets to God by going through gaps, through windows, coming from this impure land. Oim sarim, where it comes through the angels. V'hu derech chol b'chaburaso. Ubamei yisratze eved Hashem liyos lo chelek b'yeshivas Eretz Yisrael v'Torah Eretz Yisrael lo b'hachzik b'yad yoshveha. He says, so what are you going to do? How can you get a share in this? And the answer is support people who live there. Ugmimi gadol ha'ma'aseh. We've learned it's better to get other people to give than to give yourself. So he says you have to support Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. Of course you have to. And that's his argument. He has a much longer argument. But basically what he ends up saying are two things. Number one, as you see here, the value of living in Israel, which you can have a piece of by supporting it. And he says also their need tends to be greater than the needs of others. So the Chidah justified having people collect for Eretz Yisrael at the expense of local needs. Nonetheless, the poskim seem to say that local needs do come first. The Bach in Yoredeya in source Chaf, he says, "V'nira de b'shneihem me'ir acheres ka'amar de yoshvei Eretz Yisrael kodem liyoshvei chutz la'aretz." When we say that Israel is before those that were outside of Israel, that's talking about if you're choosing between Israel and people who live in another city. Aval aniyei iro b'chutz la'aretz. But the people who live in your own city, they precede other cities in Chutz La'aretz, and they precede Israel. Look at Rabbi Yosef back in source Yudalid. He just said, your city. He didn't make any distinction. Of course, he didn't mention Eretz Yisrael at all. But the Bach says locals are first, and the Shach quotes him lahalacha. The Netziv says, of course that's true. The Netziv, commenting on the Sifri, says, go back and look at the pasuk. The pasuk is in order of priority. Right? Go back to source Tezvav. Me'achad achecha, your brethren. Be'achad sharecha, in your cities. And then be'artzecha, in your land, meaning Israel. So of course it's local needs first. Rav Kook seems to have disagreed. Rav Kook in the Tshuva in source Chav Beis, keep in mind he also collected for Aniyei Eretz Yisrael, says Ukvar Kasva Poskim Al Pi Divrei Sifrisha Aniyei Eretz Yisrael Nikram Gamkein Aniyei Yercha, that Israel is automatically your city. That's the position of Rav Kook. So this is actually subject to significant debate. It's not so simple and straightforward, but I do think the weight of the poskim we tend to follow is to say that the local need will come first. And here I'll go back to the idea of giving to multiple causes, as well as to what Jeffrey mentioned before we started the shir, which is the Rav Heinemann model, in which he says that you should give, I think he said 1/3 to causes that you owe something to. You don't remember? He has a system that he published in Baltimore of dividing up your expenditures for tzedakah into thirds. And I think the idea was, if I remember correctly, and I may be remembering it wrong, maybe I'll send out a link to it when I follow up from the shir. But I think what he said was that you give 1/3 to help aniyim, like actual paupers, food bank, that type of a thing. 1/3 to institutions that you have benefited from, and therefore you have some level of debt to them. Debt, not financial debt, but like the place where your children were educated, that type of a thing. And then you could do the last 1/3 to other causes. I think that was his thing, but I'd have to go back and take a look. Belina, I will send that out with a follow-up email from the shir.
Putting aside how he says how to do it, but when we're saying general here, you do your city first.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have $100, so how much should I give to my city? I give it first, and how much?
So you could legitimately make the argument that
I'm
just going to give. Right. Well, no, I could legitimately say I'm going to disperse all 100 locally.
Yeah.
I could legitimately say that. On the other hand, what I think what Hyman is accomplishing is to say it doesn't mean that everything has to go there. It means that that's what you prioritize.
Because you were saying first, which means there's a second.
Correct, because of course you can wrap up all the needs and then just go on to helping people elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, we've never seen a lot like that.
Does the chicha mean your relatives, or does it mean other Jews?
It means your relatives. Yeah. There was a distinction that Rabbi Yosef made first, Ami Benachri. But here it's talking about relatives, yeah. So the next item is a very difficult area, and we're just going to see a little bit about it, but really I wanted to dedicate the whole shir to this topic, but I had a hard time finding anyone who wrote authoritatively on this issue. I think mostly because it's not really an issue you can resolve, and that is the enabling problem. Right? The person who keeps coming back to his relatives and says, just support me a little longer, I'm going to go out and get a job, that type of a thing. And you feel like, well, we're just enabling him to continue in this vein. Maybe if we stopped, he actually would get a job. Or not, he'd collapse in the gutter. So that's the question, is what do you do? Clearly, we want people to become self-sufficient. That's for sure. The Rambam makes it very clear when he gives his 8 levels of tzedakah in Source Chav Gimel, and the uppermost level, right? He says, Shmona Malus Yesh B'Tzedakah Zula Malavizu. We have 8 levels, one above the next. Mala Gedola She'en L'Mala Mimena. The greatest of the great is Zamachzik B'Yad Yisrael Shemach, is to hold on to the hand of a Jew who has become needy. V'Nosei Lo Matana O Halva. You give him a gift, you give him a loan. O Osi Imo Shutfus, or you make a partnership with him. O Mamtzi Lo Malacha, you find him work. Kedei That's the key. To strengthen him before he needs to ask people, before he has to start collecting. Give him a hand so that he can become self-sufficient. As the Rambam concludes, Ad shalo yipol v'yitztarech, before he falls into that kind of a position. And that's why we prefer to give loans as opposed to giving direct aid, an interest-free loan. But a loan, as opposed to giving direct aid. As I state the Shulchan Aruch, take a look at source Chav Daled. Mitzvah saseh lahalvos laniya Yisrael. There's a mitzvah of lending to needy Jews. The mitzvah gedola yosem tzedakah, even more than the mitzvah of tzedakah. But he's going to have to pay it back. Yeah. But the idea is that you provide the loan when it's actually thinkable that he might be able to pay you back. That's what you're trying to do.
The best thing is to find a job.
Yes. No, that's exactly what he said. Lahamtzi lo malacha.
But instead of Toronto, we have both. We have, like the Jewish National Fund has a growing Harvey fund that they get money from different organizations.
That's great.
And we have the other thing, and we have the Hebrew free loan side.
Right.
So we have both things.
Right, and that's what you need. The Urim commentary to the Shulchan Aruch in Source Chavei. V'hu mitzvah gedola, v'hi mitzvah gedola. Ki tzedakah kvar nitztarech lish'ol v'lo mizbayish klal. Because if you're talking about tzedakah, then he's already been embarrassed, and he has to ask. Aval zesha dayan lo higia lidekach yoser mitzvah bo. Greater mitzvah to help the other person. That doesn't mean you don't help the person who's already needing tzedakah. But the point is, don't say, and this is really the key, don't say he doesn't really need it right now. Let's let him manage. Help him before he gets into a state where he really needs it. That's the idea. We want people to become self-sufficient. And we decline to give to people if we feel they are dishonest. That's the truth. Meaning, take a look at Source Chavav, classic line. Bo v'nachzik tova l'ramoin. We should be grateful to the tricksters, people who pretend to be needy. Shel malei hein hayinu chotem b'chol yom. If not for them, we would sin every day because we would not notice the people who really are needy. Shnema v'kara lechal Hashem v'yavachachit. You would be guilty of sin because you wouldn't have provided for the people who actually are in need. Once the Ramai asks, once the trickster gets your attention, then you notice everybody and then you give to them. But the subtext of it is, otherwise, if not for being tricked, there's no reason to give to the trickster. If you know someone is dishonest, then you don't give him. And the Rambam talks about investigating. Ani she'ein makirin oso. If there's a pauper you don't know, v'amar roiv ani ha chiluni, he says, I'm hungry, feed me. Ein bo kinach of shema ramayu. You don't look into his background and start investigating. Elo afradis and osamiyah. Give him food. Haya'arum v'amar kasuni. But if he's going around without clothing on and he says, give me clothing, bod kinach of shema ramayu. Then you check. Meaning food expresses a greater desperation than clothing. Now mind you, that may be true in the Middle East at various times of year. I wouldn't do the same thing in December in Toronto. But the question is, what level of immediacy is there to this person's need? If it's not immediate, then take the time and find out. And if you know him, then if you know him, then don't delay just because he's not asking you for an urgent need. But if you don't know, so then you are indeed supposed to investigate. There's even, I thought I was going to bring this on here, but I didn't bring it on the sheet. The Gemara in Bava Basra talks about the issue of earmarking, of saying to somebody, I'm giving you this tzedakah in order that you use it for food. And you're not allowed to use it for anything else. And that's binding. If he uses it for some other purpose, that's called theft. So it's very clear that they had this idea that you would say, well, I don't want to just help him randomly. I want to help him in a way that's meaningful and productive. Now, keep in mind, if we're unsure whether the person is legit or not, you're dealing with a suffix de'oraisa. Right? It's doubt on a de'oraisa, so you go l'chumra and you say, I'm going to give. But hopefully not taking away from somebody else, because then it's a suffix on their de'oraisa. That's hard.
So you said before you should also give to Nachrim, right? You mentioned.
Yes.
So you're not going to check these people asking for money in the subway stations and street corners.
Right. So I think
you can't really check into them.
Right. So I believe that there's a certain distinction to be drawn based on level of giving. Meaning, if what you're giving to this person isn't going to affect what you give to anybody else, you're giving him $5 and you're moving on, or even giving him $1 and you're moving on, and you're not going to think twice about it, then I don't see any purpose to the investigation. If you're talking about giving him a serious amount, then yeah, Jew or not Jew, you'd have to investigate. Okay. Last bit. Giving as self-promotion, the issue of donor recognition, or as I put it in my title for this section, Hakaras Hatov or Hachrasas Hatov. Is this recognizing good, or is this cutting off good? So I remember the first time I learned Zechariah, and I came across this story, and I was really surprised. I haven't seen this story quoted in the discussion of donor recognition, but it has to be quoted in the discussion of donor recognition. This is from Zechariah Perek Vav. Zechariah, remember, is in Israel, in what seems to be the second or third generation back from the Jews who have returned for the second Beis HaMikdash. And a delegation comes from Chutz La'aretz, and they send a gift of precious metal for the Beis HaMikdash. So look at this message. Vayi dvar Hashem elai lemor. Hashem says to me, Zechariah says, Lakoach me'es hagolah, take from the diaspora, from Cheldai Tovia Yedaya. Those are delegates. Uvasa ata bayomahu, ubasa beis Yoshia ben Tzfanya, asher bo mi Bavel. Take this stuff, u'belakata kesef v'zav, take the silver and gold they brought, v'asisa ataros, and make crowns. V'samta barosh Yoshua ben Yehotzadak HaKohen HaGadol, put them on the head of Yoshua ben Yehotzadak, who is the Kohen Gadol. V'amartai love, and this is what you shall say to him. Ko amar Hashem tzvakos lemor, hine ish tzemach shemo u'mitachtav yitzmach u'bana es hechal Hashem. This man, tzemach, growth, from him will grow, and he will build the house of God. The word tzemach for Mashiach is a common association seen in Navi. But he continues to say, he will build up the Heichal of Hashem, he will raise up splendor, or wear splendor, and he will sit on his throne, he will be the Kohen. And then, in the next to last line, V'ha'ataros tiyeh, and these crowns will be for Chelem Tovia Yedaya, L'chein ben Sefanya, a zikaron. There'll be a memorial for them, B'heichal Hashem, in the sanctuary of God. Urchokim yavo, and people will come from afar. Ubanu beichal Hashem, and they will build in the sanctuary of God. Vidatem, and you will know, ki Hashem tzvakos shlachani alechem, that Hashem has sent me to you. V'hayim shama tishmeun b'kol Hashem elokechem. If you listen to the voice of Hashem, these crowns were actually marked with the names of the donors as a memorial. There's a Mishnah in Midos that mentions it. Take a look at the Radak here. He says in Source Chavtes, Kol achaz me'ataros, each of the crowns, Tiel l'zikaron beichal Hashem, will be a memorial for them in the sanctuary. K'mo shomer b'Torah l'zikaron l'fnei Hashem, klomar, nidvasam tala l'fnei Hashem l'tov lahem bazeh u'baba. Their gift will stand before God for the good for them in this world and the next. V'yesh mefarshim l'zikaron, and some say as a memorial, meaning, sheyu nizkarim b'fi adaros habayim, they will be mentioned in the mouths of future generations, ki ayush mosam ksuvim umufutachim bahem, because their names were engraved on the crowns. That's what they did. Now, the truth of the matter is that we prefer anonymity. Right? The classic Gemara in Ksuvos, which I brought you here in Source Lamed, has the story of Mar Ukva and his wife, right? Where there was a pauper in their neighborhood, and every day they would leave him 4 zuz by his door. And one day the guy said, I want to find out who it is who's doing it. And he lurks there and he sees them and they run away and then they go into the oven and Marukva's wife, her feet are not burned and Marukva's feet are burned, and it's because she gives food to the aniyim and therefore it's more useful for them right away. You remember this story with Marukva and his wife. It's all there in the Gemara Ksuvos. I didn't bring the whole story. But the point is, they try to give anonymously. Similarly, the Rambam in Source Lamed Aleph, after he says the best tzedakah is if you can give somebody the help that will make them self-sufficient, he then says, Pachos mizeh, the next level down is, Hanosein stakal ha'anim v'lo yedeh minasan v'lo yedeh ha'ani mi lokach. The next level down is, if you don't know who the recipient is, and the recipient doesn't know who the donor is, how do you do that? How do you accomplish that? Umbrella funds. I mean, the Gemara has a story which I did not bring here, about somebody who would walk around in the marketplace, and he had a bag on his shoulder, and people could take out of the bag, and he wouldn't know. But then they know who the giver is. He just doesn't know who the recipient is. You also had a room in the Beis Hamikdash where people would walk in, and either they would give or they would take, but nobody would know who's doing what. So these are ways in which we manage to preserve that level of anonymity. Nonetheless,
you give it anonymously, so the person you give it to knows, but nobody else knows.
But here everybody knows. You're writing their names on the crown.
But that's an institutional giving as opposed to individual.
That's an interesting distinction. Maybe the difference is that it's where it's institutional versus where it's for needy people. You can definitely make that argument. You can definitely make that argument that maybe there's a difference. You don't want to embarrass an individual recipient, but the institution doesn't care. The institution doesn't get embarrassed at all.
More the merrier.
Like a lot of institutions set up bronze, silver, and gold in their books.
That's right. They got it from Zechariah.
This is tzedakah, though?
Right, so it seems like they gave a donation to the Beis HaMikdash, and some of the metal is being used for this purpose, not all of it. So it would appear. Otherwise, you've completely warped what they did. But we value donor recognition for a few reasons. The Rashba had this question. It's a very funny question. There was a fellow with a house that was next to the shul, and there's a whole back and forth between this fellow and the shul. And the story ends with them deciding that he is going to donate his house to the shul. So they can expand the shul into the house. They take a look at Lamed Beis. Shalta, the question you asked the Rashba. Reuven, now we know his name, has a house next to the shul. Hiskimu kulam sheyasa kol oso bayis heichal v'cheinaso b'no mishalo. That's what they decided in the end, that the house will be part of the shul, and he built it up on his own. Ubara Reuven amakdish. So along comes Reuven, who's donating the house. Lichtov al Pesach ha'heichal shemo, and he wants to put his name on this house. Laman hazkir shemo mashehikdish. He wants his name on that which he's giving. V'ikvu biyado k'tzas min hatzibur. But some of the people are very upset. They say, no, you can't do that. Hodiani im yacholim la'akev biyado min adin olo. Who's right? Can you prevent him from doing it or not? So look at this tshuva. The tshuva, he says, Eini roa sheyuchlu hatzibur la'akev min hadin. Number one, he says, I don't think you have any legal right to stop him. V'lo min ha'ra'ui. And I have news for you. I don't think that it's a good thing to do anyway. Mikamet stadin, for a variety of reasons. First of all, ki ha'magdish rabbona mishalo la'shamayim mima'akev al yadom milahazkir shmo b'shmo b'shalo. He says, first of all, it's his house. You can't stop him from writing his name on his house. And then he's going to donate the house, but you can't stop him. V'od. He says, not only that, there are plenty of places where they do this, including Gam Bimakomenu, who goes to Lahikal. In my shul, the shul of the Rashba davens, the name of the person who donated the Aron is written on or who donated the Heichal, I should say, who donated the shul, is written on it. That's a trait of the Chachamim. Umidas vasikin. It's an ancient practice. You are rewarding people who do mitzvahs. Umidas haTorah. He says that's what the Torah does all the time. The Torah records who did mitzvahs. If the Torah can do it, you can do it too. It's a good thing to do. He says, we mentioned that Reuven saved Yosef. We mentioned that Boaz supported Rus. I'm reading through the cases he's mentioning. And he goes on. I didn't quote the entire passage, but he talks about the medrash that says, had they known that it was going to be recorded, they would have done it even better. And he quotes the Gemara in Bava Basra about Yosef ben Yoezer as a perfect example. He donates a room full of coins, right? He sells a gem to the Beis HaMikdash, for the Beis HaMikdash, and they actually marked down. They wrote, Yosef ben Yoezer hikdish achas, beno hikdish sheish. They recorded the donation. So he says, of course they did it. He says, they always did it, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. You're rewarding a mitzvah. Now, whether the donor should want to be rewarded is another story. But there's nothing wrong with rewarding. You haven't harmed, and not only that, there are other benefits, two other benefits that emerge from this. The Taz has this very funny comment in Lamed Gimel. He says, V'nira hatam, you know what I think? I think that there's a very good reason to allow the inscription of names. To prevent regifting. Right? If you donate something to the shul, and your name is on it, then the shul isn't going to be able to alter it for some other purpose. So this way, everybody will know, no, this is what he gave. So the Taz says that it's to keep the community from altering its use. Last, Rav Sternbach in Shuvas V'Anhagos in source Lamed Daled says, V'nira od shezeu lo rak l'tovas ha'cherim sheyitnu kamahu el gam l'tovas habanim. He says this will inspire other people to give, and it will inspire his children to give. Kisharom luach zikaron ma'asei avim. When they see a memorial board that lists what their parents did, nizkaron v'rotzim lasos kamo. They want to be like them. V'zeh yigrom l'zarezos amekach lasos kamo. This will energize them. Not to mention, ethically, it's hakaras hatov. You have a duty to thank people. If we have to thank Mitzrayim for the fact that we lived in their land, I think you have to thank the donors also. And so the Ramah says in Lamed Hey, he says that it is approved. He says, you shouldn't glorify yourself for the tzedakah you give. If a person glorifies himself over it, then he'll be punished. But he quotes you the Rashba saying that there's nothing wrong with writing his name on it. It is in fact even appropriate. So donor recognition is not a bad thing. Far from it. It has quite the pedigree. We pick up, God willing, January 14th with our series, The Theology of Illness. I will note